What's good, everybody? It's Batman. We're going to be doing a video reaction to Third Hokage versus Danzo. So it's actually an interesting matchup. What's it called? This is probably a matchup that, if it eventually came to my mind, that I kind of pondered about, I'd probably want to do a video on it too and kind of do some homework, kind of review both the characters and all their feats and showings in the anime or manga and everything. And just to have an honest opinion and basically, based on what you've seen and what you can think of, how it kind of would go down, what would really happen. It's a really interesting topic because, if you were to watch the show and everything and kind of like analyze it and see that they always had this type of rivalry, and Danzo was the darkness, Hiruzen was the light, but and it's kind of was like a balance that they both needed, which is why they kind of like worked together and, and it kind of connected along the way. But then there's always certain points where they kind of butted heads, but other than that, what if it really came down to where the Third Hokage viewed Danzo as an issue that needed to be taken care of? Like, let's say after the Uchiha incident, right? And he's like, all right, yeah, he's a big problem. I need to deal with him after this. And he means like by either locking him up or killing him. And bam, the shit starts to pop off. And he's like, well, that's if you can force me to be into imprisonment or if you think you can beat me. And bam, that's how it goes. And what would happen? So I don't know what scenarios or what conditions or what settings or what time and places is really going to take. But I'm assuming what they will do for the sake of the video is they're going to analyze both of them. And, it's going to kind of be the Hiruzen. It's interesting because, the last time we get to see Danzo really doing stuff is fighting against Sasuke. And then you see Hiruzen as an Edo ninja in the war arc, okay, pulling off some pretty crazy feats, So it's just interesting because obviously if you analyze it too, the war arc is a lot more higher in scaling for Naruto characters. You know what I mean? So it's like, so what? If we're considering the Third Hokage during the war arc, you know what I mean? Wouldn't that just be a steamroll, or is there more to it, you know what I mean? Or do you think Danzo could have maybe even reached the, similar levels of that as well? I don't know. But regardless, I'm not going to think too deep into it. We're going to check this video out. It's your boy, Seth the Programmer. If you guys don't know who he is, make sure to check out his YouTube. I'll make sure to put in the link in the description down below. And other than that, that's really what it's going to be, guys. So I've been putting a lot of gaming content out. But I did tell you guys I'll get some Naruto content here and there, whether if it's reactions or maybe something Naruto-based related, or better yet, my own type of video of Naruto. So, but here you guys go, and we got the Third Hokage versus Danzo.
Everyone, it's your father, Seth the Programmer, and with me today, I have my son, Six,
Not again,
the Naruto
bro.
YouTuber. Today he didn't eat
God.
all my fries, but I did see him sneaking a little bit too much snacks out of our closet today, and I was like, all right, listen. You're gonna pay me back, and we're gonna upload another collab to get those chips back, alright? So, today, we're doing something we read in the comments of our last video, which was Danzo versus Hiruzen.
Unironically, never done before. Just say that.
Unironically, never. The only time it's ever been done is just like those random 12-year-old made power level videos on YouTube
and
with
those don't
zero
count.
context, which don't count. So, yeah, this is one of the first times it's ever been done, and you'd think it's kind of a generic matchup that you hear a lot, but yeah, no one's ever really talked about it. I don't know if it's out of fear of views or what, but...
Hang on, let me lower my volume real quick, because holy shit, it's loud for me.
It is an interesting
Okay, we're
matchup,
good.
and considering we did our Minato versus Orochimaru, I feel like Hiruzen versus Danzo is actually more thematically interesting, if anything. We did Minato versus Orochimaru with Swag and I because Kishimoto was clearly trying to establish a rivalry between them, which never really panned out.
Yeah, Minato was just
But this
way
is more
surpassed
interesting
him.
because these are two old pseudo-ish rivals. It's more of a one-sided rivalry that Hiruzen dominated, where they both wanted to become Hokage. However, Danzo missed the bar. He didn't have like that strong will of fire, or he didn't have that strong resolve to sacrifice himself for the other Leaf Shinobi like Hiruzen was, and Tobirama was like, yep, he's the guy. And also, back in the day, Hiruzen was the strongest of their troop. Now, whether that means that Hiruzen was stronger than Tobirama when Tobirama made him Hokage, probably not, because of the simple fact that someone does comment that Tobirama is the strongest shinobi in Konoha when that happens.
Yep.
And then it seems as though Hiruzen becomes this ultimate god of war like shinobi, where he's running across battlefields with him and Enma after the fact.
Yeah.
So that's where he establishes his big legend, which I really hope that the legend is he slapped up Kinkaku and Ginkaku. I really hope that's what it was. But
That would be cool. That would be cool.
I feel like that's what would establish him as so legendary, is if he did something like that. But we never hear about it. So
about the Tobirama versus Hiruzen thing.
It's all about the. Now I'm really thinking about it. I had someone in my comments for one of my Naruto videos, and they were actually curious of what I thought of like a potential hypothetical prime Hiruzen. You know what I mean? Based on like the lore evidence and this and that and yada yada, you name it. And it's always interesting to kind of think about, because it kind of gets to a point where it's like, you know, do you think prime Hiruzen just slaps a lot of people? Is that actually a really legitimate a thing? Or no, is it really not a thing? And it's kind of just a lot more of hyperboles and exaggeration and just a lot of hype for the ninja. And overall, he was just kind of considered the strongest for most of his time of the era and etc. and you name it. So it's a really interesting concept. And I feel like it's fair how they kind of approached it. It makes sense. And that's fair. You know, like, and it's can't really go wrong with that unless there's something way more to it that I'm missing, or that maybe someone else knows, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, how dare you, you know, and whatever. But, you know, let's continue.
Because there's a statement in, I think, Data Book 4 that says Hiruzen, like, surpassed Tobirama as
he's
a
more
child.
talented than him.
But, yeah, it's literally just talking about talent. Like, he's got better ninjutsu and stuff because he has more nature transformations. He can do more jutsu. And Tobirama, he's not really a guy who focuses on learning other people's jutsu so much as he creates his own. So that's probably
Tobirama is more of a guy, you know, in my opinion, to where he not only did he create his own forbidden jutsus, which we're talking about jutsus that are goated, and, you know, kind of got him to the level of, you know, of being praised, of like, you know, wow, such a smart, incredible, you know, ninja to be able to develop these forbidden techniques. But yeah, Tobirama wasn't really known for that. He was really known just to make these techniques and kind of incorporate them, you know, to minor levels, not really to like perfection levels, you know, or mastery, which that's shown over and over time and time again by X, Y, and Z characters in Naruto, of them taking the jutsu that he's created and just taking it to a whole other level, aka Naruto or aka Minato, etc. And that's kind of it, you know. But yeah, you know, he's more known for, like, you know, the really forbidden jutsus, making them hacks based, you know. And if anything, the 9 times out of 10, if this man's throwing an attack, it's either going to be like water style, maybe some shadow clones or flying Raijin and shit like that. You know what I mean? Like, so, you know, yeah.
Not that he's actually like 4-year-old Hiruzen, but like in Mabop Tobirama or something like that.
Yeah, so the Tobirama versus Hiruzen debate is its own topic entirely. Personally, I like to say Hiruzen, at least as an Edo, is stronger.
For sure.
Whoever you think is stronger is whatever. He was probably, in his prime, he's definitely stronger than Tobirama, more than likely.
Yeah.
But as an old man, that's a totally different subject.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing, though, is that Hiruzen was always stronger than Danzo when they were growing up. They were both under Tobirama's squad, as an example. And Hiruzen was the top dog, but Danzo, over time, as both he and Hiruzen decay from age, this applies to Tsunade as well, all the shinobi are decaying from age, which is why Orochimaru's whole thing is, okay, he viewed Hiruzen as the top dog shinobi, like the god of war shinobi, who was like solo stomping everyone, creating waves, made the Sannin, did all this crazy stuff.
Yep.
And then he saw, you know, his master grow old and fall from grace, and he's like, okay, if a shinobi who can learn every jutsu, right, because Orochimaru thinks your capacity to learn ninjutsu.
Ads! We love ads, guys. Isn't it the best, you know? It's just wonderful.
Jutsu is how strong you are. He thinks that Hiruzen, who mastered every jutsu, was the strongest shinobi, and if the strongest shinobi falls from grace due to aging, he needs to solve aging. So this applies to Danzo as well, applies to Jiraiya probably, and it probably applies to Tsunade.
True.
With Jiraiya, he overcame that
with Sage Mode.
His Sage Mode, so he gained a new ability, even though he's been aging, or he's mastered it more, and he's learned more techniques.
True.
Orochimaru surpassed aging via literally swapping bodies with younger people.
Basically.
And Tsunade, her way of overcoming aging is more contentious. It's implied
that
she
weird.
mastered new jutsu over the years, which is stated by Orochimaru. He thinks that she has mastered more jutsu since he last saw her, so perhaps she has been honing her abilities, even though her reflexes and stuff have aged as well.
True.
And Danzo's way of overcoming aging was
fucking
he just threw
Hashirama, and Hashirama cells,
his body.
Motherfucker.
That's how Danzo overcame aging.
This man literally said, Ashura and Indra, bro. We got this, you know? Like, you're like, fucking, he's under Orochimaru, and Orochimaru's doing all these experiments and shit, and, you know, gathering information, intellect, you know, whatever. And he's like, you might be onto something. What would happen if I were to try to combine Uchiha and Senju cells and genetics to my body? I'd probably be pretty strong, right? So...
is that even though Hiruzen was the ultimate shinobi, at least at his time, he never did anything to overcome aging. He's just like, oh, you know what, Minato's crazy. He just like soloed like 1,000 ninja at once. Like, he can be Hokage. I'll just go smoke my pipe.
Yeah, he was kind of just chilling,
he's like,
you know?
Wait, I actually have to still be a shinobi? Oh damn. And then he still remained being Kage or whatever. But he never did anything to overcome his aging.
No.
So
Danzo, he's like a time clock, you know? He's kind of crippled, you know? So, like, to be fair, I think the route that they're kind of going, more in, like, the lore aspects and the narrative, you know, aspects of it and whatnot, it would be implied and make sense to establish Danzo technically scaling a little bit more higher than at least a live old Hiruzen. You know what I mean? It makes sense. So, meaning that they might be really giving the edge and more of the W condition to Danzo and Hiruzen... you know, while Hiruzen is old and alive. Now, if we're maybe talking about like Edo Hiruzen, you know, and things like that, whatever, and then against alive Danzo, then that's a whole different fucking story, you know. But I think that's the route they're going. You know, we'll go from there.
Become probably more powerful, and Hiruzen just only becomes weaker, which then makes the discussion more interesting. Did Danzo's...
And actually, I almost forgot. It makes sense, too, because... technically, there's actual evidence to really support that claim as well. One prime example, he's fighting against a fucking Sasuke that has, you know, Mangekyo Sharingan, hatred amps, you know what I mean? You fucking name it, and with the Susanoo, while Hiruzen died and struggled against Orochimaru, okay, you know, old and everything. You know what I mean? You see, like, the comparison? So, it does make sense to kind of view it that way. Because at the end of the day, you know, we've seen Itachi way back then fighting against Orochimaru, and he just bodied him effortlessly, you know? So, you know, it is interesting. That is something interesting to think about.
Amps allow him to surpass Hiruzen, who's only decayed extremely rapidly. Seeing a Noki go crazy on Madara just makes you really exaggerate how badly aging... I don't know if it's his clan or what, but Hiruzen aged like milk. He's rotten milk right now. And like,
I
maybe
think it's just
I don't
like
know.
Hiruzen didn't train or anything.
Like
yeah,
he
just
whole,
got rusty,
like,
you know,
era and stuff like that. And
because they sort of imply in the data books that Hiruzen has like this parental relationship with everyone in the village. So maybe he's too busy on being like the... I don't know, the father figure Hokage to actually keep training like he used to and keep up his physique. So he just went downhill.
So not only is he aging, but he's also growing a little bit rusty as well.
Yeah.
But even though he's extremely rusty and out of it, he's still master of over 1,000 illusions alone. You know, everyone's like, oh, Kakashi has over 1,000 jutsu. Yeah, Hiruzen has over 1,000 genjutsu alone. And
that's
on
crazy.
top of knowing every jutsu in the Leaf Village. So that's why Hiruzen was the next step up, whereas Kakashi was the prime example of an elite shinobi. He was a shinobi, the prime example of a very powerful jonin. Hiruzen was the prime example of a Kage, which was, instead of 1,000 jutsu, he just had even 1,000 illusions on top of all his other jutsu. And that was kind of the discrepancy between them. On top of that, you have Hiruzen shown compared to Orochimaru, and Orochimaru at the time, Kakashi just by looking at him is like, wow, if I tried fighting Orochimaru, he would have just decapitated me in like one attack.
His head's literally just rolling.
Yeah, I need to go lift some weights. And that's literally what happened.
I'm a fool. He's like, I completely miscalculated. What's wrong with me?
Yeah. So Hiruzen was he was a next level opponent, and so is Orochimaru. Now, what's interesting though is that Danzo is also rather impressive, but is he as impressive as Hiruzen? And that's where it gets a little bit more debatable. But I'll let Six take over from there.
So the main thing we all have to use to scale Danzo is like ignoring hacks, right? We'll go over Kodo Matsukami later.
We'll go over the actual matchup later. Let's just
that's
scale
an entire another.
Yeah, I'm gonna call it right now. I think I found the productivity hack of 2021.
We don't give a fuck about your pink sweater.
Part of the discussion. We just have Danzo's fight with these random shinobi prior to the Kage summit. And it's just sort of implied that Danzo just mops up these Jonin. But it's something you sort of expect from this person anyway. Like, he pulls out his Sharingan, and he's like, oh, I got a Sharingan. It's like pretty obvious, whatever. So he mops up Jonin. He's clearly above Jonin level, whatever. He's like a Kage level, Hiruzen rival. And then he gets into his fight with Sasuke, and you would think Danzo's doing pretty well, but
he's really not. He was just getting steamrolled.
We like to do brainstorming for the base. We don't script our collabs. We like to brainstorm just like for a few minutes.
Yeah.
And when we looked at the fight, we're like, wait a minute. He kind of just is getting one tapped
over and over
until Sasuke just gets tired.
Like, there's literally a part
like he basically in that fight, and they're not fucking wrong. He's just getting steamrolled over and over, and he's only able to do the certain moves he gets, or the accomplishments at least, the rewarded, aspect of it, due to him just coming back over and over and over and just having a freebie. Like, and then obviously just exhausting Sasuke because he still only has a limited amount of chakra and stamina. And gradually, then eventually it becomes a little bit more easier for Danzo. And remind you, Danzo also has Hashirama cells, which enhance your stamina and chakra and all that, and etc. overall, and healing factor, you name it, X, Y, and Z. Like, fucking Obito can literally just spam his Mangekyo Sharingan like there's no tomorrow, okay? So, absolutely, fucking...
Sasuke's coming at Danzo, and in one swoop, he cuts off his arm, and then cuts Danzo in half. And it's like, what? He crushes him with the Susanoo hand. He punches him and kills him one time. The arrow is too fast for him to even weave signs or something like that.
Yep.
Like, he's literally getting bullied the entire fight. It's crazy.
Basically.
Yeah. So something else though is, like, if you want like a more direct scale, how strong is Danzo actually? He's able to somewhat like peel apart like the armor of the Susanoo using his summoning jutsu, as well as him using a wind style that's like being enhanced via his summoning jutsu on Sasuke's back, while his Susanoo is somewhat immobile. It's somewhat immobile because it doesn't even have legs at this moment, but that's a whole different argument. But even after using like basically his ultimate AP technique, like if he was to have, what's his strongest attack, it would probably be that, as far as we know, other than his hacks.
Yeah.
And it literally just kind of rips off some skin off of the Susanoo. It doesn't actually do any damage. And other than that, Sasuke literally grabs him, and I'm not joking, he just crushes him like a piece of paper or something. So the other argument, though, if you want a more direct scale of Danzo, is that how does he scale to Sannin level? Like, how does he actually scale to Orochimaru Jiraiya?
And let's also not forget the fact as well, guys, that we're talking about a Sasuke that just showed up to the 5 Kage Summit, threw hands with everybody, basically, and then eventually gets to this point. So he's not, like, at full maximum strength. You could argue that he is, and the reason why, I'm not going to be, like, ratty, okay? Like, he does get chakra and stamina and kind of healed from Zetsu. He also does get healed and recovered from Karen in the Kamui dimension. And then eventually, and then he also gets like another healing and stamina regen and all that from Karen after the fight with Danzo. Okay, so he is getting help, but still, it is still impressive.
And Tsunade. So now, while we do know there's a relationship between Orochimaru and Danzo, it does seem somewhat headcanonly implied that Orochimaru is the superior of their duo. Danzo wanted Orochimaru to be the Kage, for the most part, not only because of his decision-making in their relationship, but probably because it makes more sense than him being Kage. But on top of that, the Konoha elders wanted Jiraiya or Tsunade to be Kage over Danzo. And in fact, Kakashi was also being recommended as Kage. And then, after everything else pretty much failed, it was just they decided to go with Danzo over Kakashi after Tsunade and Jiraiya were out of the picture.
Yeah.
Implying that the Sannin were better Kage candidates than someone like Danzo. So, it could be heavily implied that Danzo was not Sannin level. So
yeah, and then like even with that,
one thing I will say though, I can see the angle they're playing on that narratively wise, and that it makes some form of logical sense. See, the interesting part about that, why that's not really a really strong argument in my opinion, is because I feel like they were the main candidates to be really chosen for that due to the fact of them having more of the core establishments of Konoha, like the Will of Fire, basically understanding right and wrong, you know what I mean, and making the really important leadership type decisions. Danzo was a very mysterious, dark person, very like to himself, very excluded from everybody, always kind of wanting it his way or the highway, you know. He wasn't really a people's person. He didn't really have those capabilities or that type of, you know, I guess leadership that was more honorable or qualified for their choosing and expectations, if that makes any sense. And if we look at it from that aspect of things, which there's plenty of narrative implications of that and evidence to support that as well, like, you know what I mean, it makes more sense of why they were mainly considering Kakashi or Jiraiya or Tsunade and things like that over Danzo. Because at the end of the day, you know, if we're being honest, whether we like it or not, you know, Danzo with all those Sharingan eyes and Izanagi, okay, with his wind style, you know what I mean, and, you know, even wood style, I think he could also use the wood style as well, because he has Hashirama cells, you know what I mean, like, you know, with his ceiling ability, like, he's pretty strong, you know, like, and if you really think about it, think of these as being matchups, like Danzo versus Jiraiya, or Danzo versus Tsunade, or Danzo versus Kakashi. You know what I mean? Like, if you actually think about it, it would be interesting, depending on, obviously, what versions of the characters and this and that. But, you know, so, I don't know. I wouldn't be too far to try to go the route that he could more likely only be Sonic level. I feel like that could be, you know what I mean, disingenuous, or, I don't know, a little bit dishonest, in my opinion. But there's a way to argue that with some forms of evidence and narrative aspects of it, and logically, it would make sense. So I get what they're saying.
The Hokage is supposed to be the strongest in the village. That's kind of what they go for, as well as being trustworthy. So they're not going to pick someone who's weak just to be Hokage just because they're trustworthy. So you could kind of imply even Kakashi over Danzo. And then going through Data Book 3, this seems to be somewhat consistent. So Data Book 3 says about Kakashi, the hand that combines spirited technique belongs to Konohagakura's #1 ninja. And then if
he's also called the #1 ninja in Data Book 1 as well.
Yeah. And if you look at the Shinobi data chart, it tells you what the little symbol by the people on the data book means, and it means that Danzo
I've spent my public life in a bathing suit.
She's pretty.
From now on, I am gonna be.
I ain't gonna cap on that. She was pretty.
Shinobi at the time. So.
Yeah. So even though he was kicked out of like the root thing and his root was discontinued, he's still a Konoha Shinobi. That was never like stricken from him. So whether or not this applies to Part 1, if it applies to Part 1, that Kakashi is just objectively stronger than Danzo, even in Part 1. If it only applies to this part, then it means that at least Pain arc Kakashi is stronger than Danzo.
Yeah, and because that's a little weird, because, you know, something we all understand in Naruto is it's very, very cut and dry and clear that throughout time, characters periodically naturally get stronger. Okay, at least, you know, because they're either continuing to train, or they're developing, you know, new jutsus, or they're increasing certain abilities, they're trying to compensate for the weaknesses, things like that. And overall, you know, I'm sorry, but if we analyze Part 1 Kakashi all the way to War Arc Kakashi, there's a stupid big fucking difference, okay? Especially Boruto Kakashi, which is technically would be the strongest version of Kakashi out of all of them, without, obviously counting Kamui. Kamui's just ridiculously broken, at least Kakashi's eye. But, other than that, I don't know about all that. Like, if we're talking maybe, Pain Arc Kakashi, or even, or better yet, the same shit 5 Kage arc, which that Kakashi, if they, let's say those two were to fight, I think actually personally it would be an interesting matchup, Danzo versus Kakashi, if it really came down to it. And shit, I might even do a video on that if I really want to, just kind of analyzing both of them, their feats, this and that, you name it, and kind of seeing who would kind of pull the W or whatever. I feel like it would more than likely go in the direction of Kakashi for the W, but could Danzo pull it off? Absolutely. You know what I mean? So it's interesting. I feel like, they could either be in the same ballpark or Kakashi could scale, over in a certain way. But like I said, I would have to really elaborate on that and explain why I think that way. And that's kind of my opinion with that. But, we'll leave it at that.
Interesting because Shukaku, who is basically the top dog in terms of intelligence in the Leaf Village,
very smart.
He's like, no, Kakashi should be like the Hokage. And then Danzo's like, no, we need reasoning right now. The argument Danzo makes to become Kage is not even his power level.
Yeah, no, it's more him making the right decisions.
No,
and
you've given all these Kage a chance. You need someone like me now. You need someone with a different mindset to save this village. And that's why he was more specifically chosen at the time.
Absolutely, that's true.
A lot of the things, they were also trying to bring up, Kakashi's age, he's young, he's, stuff like that. They were, like, doubting him a little bit, but not because of his power level. So you could argue even Danzo being chosen, even though Hokage is supposed to be the strongest in the village, that Danzo being chosen as Hokage was the feudal lord being a little bit ignorant and being manipulated, which might be Koto Matsukami as well. We never really know. But at the time, that's what we know about him. So it seems as though, if you're trying to be more rational, that the Sannin are probably stronger than Danzo. And Danzo is probably, if anything, weaker than Kakashi. And this is actually somewhat implied by Kakashi also reacting to a stronger Sasuke's Susanoo arrow. Whereas Danzo could barely do that to a weaker Sasuke. So if the Sasuke Susanoo type is based on...
That's interesting. A weaker Sasuke. Let me know. Someone needs to let me know in the comments what he means by that, because from my memory, I would have to reread the fight in the manga or look at it in the anime, whatever. Okay. From my understanding, all the amps have already been applied to this guy, and like, unless there's something I'm forgetting, I'm pretty sure they're the same. And the only reason why Kakashi was able to deal with the arrow was because of Kamui. Not because of his speed, his body, and all that. He literally states that himself. It was because of his broken-ass hacks ability. While Danzo doesn't really have the need to dodge because of Izanagi, for God's sake. But it's obviously clear as day, and I think there's even a statement. Like I said, I would have to go back to the Sasuke versus Danzo fight, which I'm pretty sure they did that before making this video. So, but, Danzo wouldn't be able to dodge that with his body speed or anything either. And it's more in character for him just to take the hit, to get the element of surprise with Izanagi. And at the end of the day, even if he wanted to dodge it, he ain't fucking dodging that, okay? He would either need Substitution Jutsu, Shadow Clone, or aka Izanagi. So, it's interesting. I will say that at the very least. But I don't know. I don't remember what could have made Sasuke more stronger at that point. Because if anything, Sasuke was basically blind at this point. Okay? And even though he did get chakra and healing from Karen before he had to throw hands with Kakashi, you could argue that Sasuke at this point is a lot more weaker than when he first started off fighting against Danzo. Due to, fucking everything that's basically happened to that point. So that's a little weird. I don't know about all that, but like I said, I haven't, it's been quite a bit. My memory isn't the greatest. I'm just saying that right now, and that's all I'll say on that.
on his power level, which is actually implied when it first gets the clothes and the bow and arrow. It's actually stated he's stronger. Then when Sasuke's Susanoo doesn't just get clothes, but full armor, like Itachi's Susanoo, then Kakashi reacts to it. Then Kakashi has actually better feats by that time, which further supports he is the #1 shinobi over Danzo as well. So, with that out of the way, you can somewhat imply that
okay,
Hiruzen is...
So his Susanoo goes into the next stage when he's fighting against Kakashi. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, you could argue that the arrow could be, you know, increased in power or stronger. That makes sense. Susanoo has stages, so I get that.
Stronger than Danzo.
Like, just speaking of Itachi, because we went over this a little bit before video. After Hiruzen dies, Itachi comes back to the village in order to, like, kind of flex on Danzo, like, yeah, I'm still here. Don't mess with Sasuke. And Seth was saying, you know, this may imply that since Hiruzen's dead and Itachi's doing this, that prior to his death, Hiruzen is the thing keeping Danzo in check.
Yeah, for sure.
Because Danzo doesn't really listen to Hiruzen orders anyway. So it's probably like a power thing.
Yeah, so it's somewhat implied that Hiruzen, like, he was somewhat wary of his power still. Which is interesting because he knows, you know, about his power compared to, say, Orochimaru and stuff like that. Even hears Hiruzen talking about it. Lots of points, Hiruzen even says directly, like, no, a fight with Orochimaru is scarier.
Fuck my life.
Than you think, and it's very obvious that Danzo probably knows that as well. If Orochimaru knew it, if Orochimaru's like, yep, what's up, old man, I know I'm gonna be able to fight you now, then Danzo probably knows as well, being very close to Hiruzen throughout the years.
Yeah.
But still, the fight is interesting, not just because of that, but it's more so, can Hiruzen actually out-hacks Danzo, or is his power level enough to overcome Danzo's hacks? So, this is weird. So, I'll say right off the bat, if Danzo starts off with Kodo Matsukami, there's no real battle to be had.
Yeah.
It's a genjutsu that Hiruzen arguably doesn't even know about or know that Danzo even has.
Yep.
And it affects you, like, subconsciously to the point where you don't even know you got hit by it. So, it's kind of, like, weird to argue Hiruzen would just neg it without, when the fight first just...
That's actually really interesting to think about because... there was a point where I totally forgot Danzo even had that at his disposal after the whole Uchiha incident and everything. That's a big fucking deal. Kodo Matsukami is a big fucking deal. So the fact that, you know, he even has it in his little utility belt, okay, it's pretty serious. And obviously that could be a W condition overall. And yeah, Hiruzen wouldn't really be able to kind of combat that or have any form of measure of a counter, unfortunately. And to be honest, I don't even know why Danzo didn't even fucking do that. You know what I mean? Like, this motherfucker could have done that right after the Uchiha incident and just controlled Hiruzen and made him do whatever the fuck he wanted, basically. You know, obviously certain ninja like Shikamaru's dad and etc. would have kind of caught on to the indifference of Hiruzen's decisions and the things that he's starting to do now, and they'd be like, what's going on? It's a little weird. And shit, for all we know, maybe something similar. They'd be like, wait a minute, his chakra is disturbed, blah, blah, and then bam, they get him out of it, you know, whatever. But if it's, at the end of the day, if it's in a fight, he's dead, you know, what the fuck? So.
Starts if they're in character. However, if it's used mid-battle, say like Hiruzen's using Enma, then it's a little bit more interesting because you could argue that Enma can work independently of Hiruzen and knows all his mental states and would be able to help him counter Kodo Matsukami. I'll let you go into that, but
yeah. So during the battle with Orochimaru, Hiruzen is obviously very distraught because he's fighting his student.
Yeah, he's mentally nerfed.
Kakashi even says he feels like sort of the same way whenever he goes up against Sasuke. It's just like...
And similar to when Minato was looking at Obito and realizing it was him all along. That completely fucked up Minato. Like, that made things horrendous during, I think it was, during like the whole Jubito thing and etc. and yada yada.
A feeling these people have. He's not fighting like himself, like he's literally allowing himself to be hit, things like that. And Enma starts fighting for Hiruzen, like fending off some of Hashirama's wood style, which by the way, in and of itself is a feat. He's fending off Hashirama's wood style, and he's like, Hiruzen, why are you acting so weird? Start fighting for real. So if he notices Hiruzen's like messed up or his chakra's disturbed, he could probably just break him out by handing him chakra, the same way they do to Mifune in the Kage Summit after he's out of Kodo Masukami.
Yeah.
Another thing, too, is if you think that Danzo has a summoning jutsu, at least by part 1, which this is debated about as well, but if you think that Danzo has his summoning jutsu in part 1, then Hiruzen's Enma is actually stronger than Danzo's elephant. He would actually be able to throw Enma at Danzo if he ever gets hit by Kodo, or at least Enma would be able to act independently, and would probably be able to put the hands on Danzo to the point where it would probably break Hiruzen out of Kodo, arguably. And this is weird because Danzo's Kodo Matsukami works a little bit different than Shisui's or Itachi's Crow, which you can also get into if you want. But
yeah, I mean, the theory is extremely simple. It's just that the eye that is on Itachi gives commands, while Danzo's eye requires a constant stream of chakra to control someone, sort of like a puppet. So Itachi's command is protect the leaf, but with that, he can do different things to protect the leaf. Like he can teach Naruto things about teamwork, and he can go stop Kabuto, who he deems like a big threat, bigger than Obito, whatever. And Danzo, he's actively making Mifune respond to the Kage and things the Kage are saying in current time.
Yeah.
So it's not like he gave him a set, like a script to read or anything like that. He's literally telling him like, oh, say this now, say this now. And then that makes Al come down. And he's like, oh, I recognize that chakra because Al's fought Shisui in the past sometime. And he's saying Shisui's genjutsu lets you control people, blah, 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 without their awareness. And that's when Danzo turns it off. They're asking him to like remove his bandages, show him the Sharingan.
So in terms of Kodo, if it's used at the very beginning, it probably wins by default. But if it's used mid-battle, Enma might be able to snap him out of it. Enma is strong enough to fight the Kage summonings even before he's in his staff form. Apparently his staff form is stronger than his normal state, and in his normal state, he literally kicks away the Hokage summonings, which were already rivaling Orochimaru and Hiruzen to begin with. So Enma would be strong enough to actually put the hands on Danzo, as Enma is stated to be the strongest summoning and has that feat. On top of this, though, there are some weird things in terms of the fight that I actually kind of made me want to do this video, and that's misconceptions. So the first thing we need to go over, Hiruzen is strong enough to fight Danzo, but does he have the stamina to? This is the biggest question. Does he have the stamina to? Now, when I was actually brainstorming this topic, I actually thought of a weird refutation to the fact that Hiruzen has bad stamina, because I actually don't believe that anymore at all. I actually think he has insane stamina. So this is the reason I think he has insane stamina. So the one thing that people point out for him having bad stamina, and I used to do this as well literally an hour ago, is that Hiruzen fights 3 Sannin level opponents. Dude, imagine if all 3 Sannin jumped him at once, and that's pretty much what Hiruzen is doing, okay? Imagine he had to fight Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Orochimaru all at the same time, and maybe in their base forms. And that's pretty much what he did. And then people are like, oh, after he had to fight these 3 Sannin, he got a little bit tired. It's like, yeah, he would get a little bit tired. Like, that's kind of insane. Like, that's cracked.
Yeah.
And then, after he gets a little bit tired, he then goes into basically his ultimate state, which is, you know, the state that Haku suggests, amped Shinobi, and this applies to Hiruzen as well. And
that does happen
as well, that when he thinks he's protecting others and he gets over his depression fighting Orochimaru, his true powers are unleashed. He then dispatches the 2 Kage, which were rivaling the Sannin, and then he squares off with Orochimaru, to the point where he's tug-of-warring with his soul for an hour. And this is stated, for an hour. He's tug-of-warring with his soul for an hour. But, not only this is after he had to take down the 2 Sannin level Kage, was already exhausted, and then Enma has to catch a sword, impaling him from behind, and literally making him bleed out for an hour while he plays tug-of-war with a Sannin who's already probably stronger than Danzo. Yeah. For an hour! And the Anbu in the background, they're like, what kind of shinobi can fight for an hour? This is virtually unheard of.
Yeah.
He says this is a legendary stamina feat, basically. From old stamina, like, restricted Hiruzen. He's going this crazy. So then
now, one thing I can say though, you could easily argue that it could actually be something separate from his stamina. And what I mean by that is, like, due to the mental amp, with the whole will of fire and etc. and that type of thing, that's what's allowing him to keep pushing on and etc. That it can kind of be, irrelevant due to the whole stamina thing and whatnot. But regardless, it is still impressive, and you gotta have enough chakra and stamina to be able to last anyways. If you don't, then you just die, right? So, and he didn't die. It's not like he passed out or anything. So I'm just saying that more likely probably did help. But we'll kind of leave it at that.
Okay, if Hiruzen can fight basically 3 Sannin level opponents, maybe not amped Sannin, but at least base.
Just a few questions.
No, fuck your questions.
Time. I've had over 30,000 drinks.
I can't skip this one. Oh no, I can. God,
Sannin level opponents, which are still very powerful. Then that means you have to wonder, can Danzo put that same level of pressure on Hiruzen to even make him that tired? Can Danzo put the same level of pressure on Hiruzen as he has to fight his own student and as well as 2 people who rival him in power all at the same time? Can Danzo put that pressure on him? And I don't think he can. Can
an arguably weaker than Kakuzu fight Kakashi opponent fight on the level of 3 Sannin at the same time? Probably not.
Probably not. Probably not. And it's to the point where it's like, okay, I want you guys to ask yourself this. Say Hiruzen goes full power, all right? It's a versus matchup, right? Say Hiruzen goes full power. He's ready to defend the Leaf Village. He's like, all right, Danzo, I'm sorry. I don't care if it's my brother or whatever. I'm going to kill you now. Do you think that Danzo can last for an hour against Hiruzen?
No.
Because here's the thing, Sasuke doesn't have good stamina.
Maybe not, maybe. Because, I don't know, one thing I will say is he does have Hashirama cells, you know what I mean? And that does help with stamina and regeneration capabilities and you name it. So I could see it being possible for him being able to hang. And then with him having Izanagi and his jutsus and you name it, I don't see why not. But then again, I understand their perspective on it, and I get it, and I could see why they think maybe not, But then again, we got to remember, it's kind of back to the whole same aspect of, I've talked about this before in certain, whether if it's in certain debates or battles or Naruto in general, whatever. All because a character has more showings or more impressive showings doesn't mean guaranteed by default. Therefore, this character can't because he doesn't have that same amount of showings or whatever, or all his showings that we've seen were nowhere near as impressive as his. Like, from a logical point of view, obviously you want to, say person A would win because they just have better showings or whatever, this and that. But I don't know, I feel like it's a little weird, you know what I mean, in that you could be giving too much credit to someone and really downplaying the other too much, if that makes any sense. If I'm even speaking to anyone right now. So I don't know. And then, like I said, with the whole Hashirama cells and you name it and all that crap, I don't know. I feel like it's a hit and miss. I feel like he could or he can't. I don't see what's wrong with that. For them to just be like, oh no, 99% sure or 100% sure that he can't hang for that long, whatever. I don't know, So, because at the end of the day, if we were having fucking Hiruzen fighting against Sasuke, the same one that Danzo fought, I'm going to tell you right now, like, he would have got fucking squashed, okay? Like, if we're talking about the old Hiruzen that fought and fucking part, the beginning of Naruto, and now he had to fight against Sasuke, that level, he's getting washed up, okay? Like, absolutely washed. Hiruzen was never even on the level of Itachi at that point, okay? Like, so, yeah, I don't know, but...
Either. Especially with MS. When he has EMS, he has good stamina. But MS Sasuke does not have good stamina at all. He uses a few abilities, he wants to pass out. It's just like Itachi. Itachi's Amaterasu, one time he's huffing and puffing, alright? Same thing. Here, Sasuke uses his MS ability and runs out of stamina. But the other thing people don't know is that while Sasuke runs out of stamina very quickly using his abilities, so does Danzo. Because what people don't know is there's 2 statements of Danzo losing chakra due to using abilities. The first one is where he can barely react to Sasuke's Susanoo arrow, which is weaker and slower than the one Kakashi reacted to, wink wink. But it's also stated he loses chakra when his eyes close.
True.
So whenever one of his eyes close due to him regenerating, he loses chakra. He basically loses power every single time. So Hiruzen, if he's whooping him up with Enma's staff for an hour, it's only getting easier as time goes on rather than harder.
True.
Which makes it even harder to argue Danzo has the actual pressure of Orochimaru plus 2 Sannin level summonings. It's just not likely at all, at least in my opinion. But I'll let you talk, Six.
No, I agree, like, completely. And then I literally just found
makes sense.
Like,
makes sense.
I
get him.
Wait, what is this?
At the end of the Sasuke fight, when Danzo is unaliving himself, he's talking about Hiruzen.
Like I said, one thing I will say is I would have to rewatch the fight, obviously, with Sasuke against Danzo, you know, read the manga, whatever, to gain a little bit more aspect of it, to really have like a full-on, like, okay, I either feel you or I don't with what Seth and Six is saying. But from what I've heard so far, and kind of from my memory, it is clicking. And I could see where they're going on, and basically where they're reaching to, and it makes sense. So,
and he says, no matter how far I ran, I could never catch up to you. So,
there you go. That's why Danzo. That's why Itachi had to remind Danzo not to mess with Sasuke after Hiruzen died. Okay, there you go.
That too.
So Hiruzen did actually seem to scare Danzo in the power department. Anyways, guys, that's really all there is to say. Feel free to subscribe to me. Get your boy to 1 million. Thank you. Also, subscribe to Six. He's amazing. Yep. And other than that, goodbye.
So, really good video.
But there's purpose in your plan.
There's some things I was like, whatever, but it was a good video overall. It made sense, on the logical, standpoint side of things. It makes sense. Their angles, their arguments, and everything. And I really like the analysis that they did overall, especially from the start to middle to the finish. So it was really, really interesting on how they kind of approached it. They didn't really talk too much about the abilities, this and that, or who could do what, and yada yada. But they kind of went more on the lore, the narrative, and and then kind of like looking at it overall. And then being like, wait a minute, Hiruzen just way more impressive in this department, like X, Y, and Z. Danzo, on the other hand, he's kind of struggling X, Y, and Z. So it makes sense. Now, like I said, if I were to rewatch the fight and everything, and I would really look at it, even though with the whole Izanagi thing where, yes, he is losing chakra from that, and obviously dispersing ninjutsu attacks is summoning, all of that's chakra inducing, okay? Obviously the more chakra you use and etc., the more you're fighting, the less stamina and the less chakra you're going to have. And meaning overall you're getting weaker technically. But yet, unless I'm wrong, Danzo was still able to put up a good fight against Sasuke. Because, yeah, sure, he's getting weaker and weaker and weaker. Or whatever, gradually. But yeah, he was still putting up a good fight against Sasuke. Well, at least a decent one. And then Sasuke just kept one-shotting whatever, this and that. But, that's kind of what you got. And at the end of the day, the end game result for Danzo was just kind of to tire out and outlast Sasuke, and that was really all it was. And Sasuke was kind of struggling and getting really tired and stamina-wise and all that too. So, it's interesting. It's interesting. I don't know. So what I will at least say for the conclusion is, depending on how you're analyzing it and viewing it, certain things can work argument-wise, debate-wise, whatever. I'm not going to disagree with, any of that. But one thing I will say, if we want to talk maybe more in favor, obviously Danzo, if he immediately does Kodomatsu Kami, yeah, sure. But that's kind of, that's the lame way of giving a W to someone. So let's say besides that, and they're kind of feeling each other out, they're fighting, whatever. Basically, the only way you can argue more for Danzo at that point of him potentially pulling a W, is maybe trying to establish, like the whole scaling type aspect of things that, Hiruzen during that time was fighting against drastically weaker Edo summonings, which I'm assuming that's why they were saying Sannin level summonings, and having to fight against Orochimaru at its prime as well, And then with everything else and the statements and yada yada, which, yeah, it can all be impressive from looking at it and analyzing it and you name it. But then again, that's way in the past. And we're talking about old man Hiruzen. While with Danzo, he doesn't really have those same implications. And they really nailed this in the beginning of the video in the middle, which was interesting how they kind of twisted it, okay? To where they're like, well, that doesn't matter because of this, you know? And it's weird because at the end of the day, Danzo doesn't really have those limitations. You know what I mean? With being old and getting weaker from that, you know. Instead, he has Hashirama cells, you know what I mean? He's figured out his own way to kind of, you know, I guess, make up for him, you know, for him getting old, which is kind of how they talked about how Orochimaru did it, Tsunade, etc. Sage Mode was, you know, for Jiraiya. So it's interesting, okay? And overall, Danzo kind of did his own input, you know, his own way of doing it. And, you know, then you have the whole side of things of like throughout time, you do gradually get stronger, especially if you're training and honing your skills, etc. and all that. And if you were to compare that Danzo against Sasuke, okay, and then compare it to a Hiruzen all the way in the beginning of Naruto, you could easily just have scaling arguments right there and be like, well, wouldn't that mean Danzo just upscales and is higher than Hiruzen at that point? You know what I mean? And then not only that, for the last statement that Six said with Hiruzen saying, oh, like, I can never, you know, surpass whatever, that could just be implemented towards many things. It doesn't mean, you know, at that point, mainly power. That could have meant, you know, in other areas and categories of comparing himself to Hiruzen. Okay, so either way, it's very contentious. I don't know, it's very weird. I will put it that way. But if you kind of analyze it from that viewpoint, Danzo, right? If you don't, and you analyze it, what they kind of did with the plot twist, okay, and kind of what they went on towards the end of the video with Hiruzen and all that, then yeah, sure, Hiruzen, because he does have better stamina and outlasting feats and all that, and etc. And being able to fight, you know, fucking 3, you know, Sonic level ninja at the same time, okay? So, you know what I mean? Like, and then being able to do the rest, and you name it with the soul thing, and, you know, so at the end of the day, I'll leave it at that. If I had to give my honest opinion of things, Danzo wins it with Komatsukami, obviously, that's one. With the whole scaling thing and looking at the different time points and all that, Danzo again 2. Okay, Hiruzen gets it once, you know, due to with the whole argument and all this stuff that Six and Seth said, you know, towards all that, because that is pretty solid as well. So you can give Hiruzen with that. Other than that, I can only give Hiruzen a W again if we're talking about Edo Hiruzen, because I feel like Edo Hiruzen was a fucking beast. I'm surprised they didn't really talk about Edo, which they probably didn't, because I don't, you know, unless they're not on the same boat as me, but pretty sure Edo Hiruzen would fucking steamroll Danzo. Okay, back to the whole scaling thing, you know, the war arc and then this arc and this arc. So overall, you know, what I will at least say is it's interesting, but I feel like it is more in favor with Danzo. Hiruzen probably gets it once. Danzo would get it like 2 times out of 3, if that makes any sense. So Hiruzen 1 out of 3, Danzo 2 out of 3. And that's basically it. But if you don't want to consider the other thing I just said, then it would be vice versa. Hiruzen like 2 out of 3, Danzo 1 out of 3 with the whole Konomatsukami shit. So, and we'll kind of just leave it at that. But let me know what you guys think. I don't care. Let me know what if you think it's just Danzo all day, or if you think it's Hiruzen all day. Do you think it's pretty balanced and it can go in favor for either character? I'm curious. Let me know. But at the end of the day, that's going to be it for this video, guys. If you enjoyed the reaction, make sure to leave a like. Comment your thoughts down below. Like I said, I'm curious what you guys think, your thoughts, and etc. Subscribe for more content. Subscribe if you guys love the channel. If you love Naruto, that's even more of a reason to. I'll be able to come out with Naruto content gradually. Nowhere near the same level as my gaming and all that and whatnot, but like I said, I'll do my very best to get videos here and there with Naruto-related topics and things. So, yeah, that's basically it. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.